Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to the 4th episode of Dungeons Academy. Cue the intro. I hope you guys enjoyed that intro. I made it by editing out parts from the opening song to Persona 5 the animation. The original video will be linked in the description box down below for those of you that are interested. Anyways, our hero for today is Miss_Andrew. They sent me a video of them doing a solo floor 5 run as a healer with mage items. They ran a Spirit Scepter, Midas Staff, and a sheep pet with all their talismans set to Bazaar. I assume they ran healer to be able to heal themselves whenever they need to. I've only seen them use the healing circle and they did not use the wish at all, which is the healer ultimate ability. Personally, I would recommend using your ultimate ability when you need to. Do not save your abilities and just use them whenever it is required. I would also recommend running Mage for the passive ability Guided Sheep to be able to open cracked walls and or crypts more easily. But if you like to go healer for more survivability, then by all means go ahead. Just remember that if you are a healer, you will need to heal yourself or your teammates to get milestones. Since there isn't that big of a difference between the Mage class and Healer class, you should be fine as long as you do not rely on your Mage Beam or have any weapons with a cooldown longer than 1 second. I would like to point out one thing before we proceed any further. Instead of using your Spirit Scepter, only use your Midas Staff for mini bosses or bosses. I know there is a 1 second cooldown in between Midas Staff uses, and since our hero is a healer class, our hero doesn't have a shorter cooldown for the Mage passive, so it is fine for them to switch to a Scepter in between Midas Staff uses. But if you main Mage and you use a Midas Staff for mini bosses, do not switch around with other weapons unless you are mechanically skilled enough. Like, I'll give an example, 15H. Should cycle between Ice Spray, Midas Staff, Yeti Sword, in between cooldowns. On screen, there should be a step-by-step tutorial on how to do it. Feel free to pause and read if needed. Of course, this doesn't apply to people without multiple mage weapons, so if you aren't interested in learning this or you already know how to, skip to the timestamp on screen right now. And I will proceed to demonstrate how to do this. After one loading screen, I've arrived on my island. The reason why people cycle mage weapons is to maximize DPS against the mini-boss. Normally, cycles do not last longer than 5 seconds since in most situations, the mob you're targeting should be dead after 5 seconds. The cycle begins with the Ice Spray wand if you have one, otherwise use a Voodoo Doll. After successfully stunning the mob with your Ice Spray or Voodoo Doll, switch to your mage weapon with a cooldown and use that weapon. For this example, I'll be using the Midas Staff and Yeti Sword, but it can be replaced with any weapon like the Pigment Sword or anything else that has a cooldown. Otherwise, switch to your main weapon that doesn't have a cooldown. It can be the Dreadlord Sword, Jerry Sheen Gun, Bonzo Staff, Spirit Scepter, as long as it does not have a cooldown. Use the weapon without a cooldown and switch to your weapon with a cooldown, rinse and repeat until said mob is dead. While we're here, here's a quick tip for the Yeti Sword. If you want to aim properly with the Yeti Sword, the best way to aim would be right below the mob's feet, and you will hit a stationary mob most of the time. Regardless of the distance, just try to aim right below the mob's feet and you should be able to hit it most of the time. Quick tip over. And going back, make sure that you rely on timing and not button mashing to switch around multiple mage weapons. You need to know exactly when you should switch back, because if you're going back too early or too late, it will defeat the entire purpose of weapon cycling, and it is only detrimental for you. You will lose out on a lot of DPS instead of gaining DPS if you misuse this technique. This cycling thing should only be done if you are using mage weapons with a short cooldown. Anything 5 seconds or less is considered short and can be done even if the cooldown is only 1 second, as long as there is a cooldown. Do not cycle with weapons that do not have any cooldown, otherwise it will defeat the purpose of cycling. An example of this will be cycling between Frozen Scythe and Bonzo Staff. Now, some of you might think about the Bone Ring when I said do not cycle between weapons that doesn't have a cooldown, but the Bone Ring requires you to cycle even if it doesn't have a cooldown. Let me explain why. On paper, the Bone Ring doesn't have a cooldown, but there is a downtime of 1.5 seconds if it doesn't hit any obstacles. Example of obstacles being walls, grounds, or anything that is solid. The Bone Ring has a downtime of 3 seconds if it does hit an obstacle, and the downtime can be considered as a cooldown, which is why this rule does not apply to Bone Rings. With that being said, I'm gonna remind you guys one more time. Cycling around weapons like that as a mage is not needed because the cooldown is relatively shorter and should only be done if you know what you are doing. Of course, feel free to practice this technique if you would like to. Anyways, let's talk about our hero. I went ahead and asked, and he told me to address him as a he, so I'll do that for the rest of the video. So far he's doing pretty well, but since I've been mostly talking about Mage Weapon Cycles and haven't talked much about what he's been doing so far, so let us go back and I will get a few clips where I think he could have done better. He should have used his AoE to get to the top chest and completely ignored the angry archaeologist instead of going up the flight of stairs and spending a few seconds on the mini-boss. He also should have teleported to the bat or item drop secret mid-air instead of waiting till he touched the ground to do so. He didn't do that because he didn't pre-plan his next move on what he should do. Another thing I noticed him do a few times is looking at the map on his hands instead of looking at the minimap. As for his minimap, he should definitely change it to something that can allow him to see the entire map instead of a small portion of the map. My personal minimap is static instead of revolving around my player model, but that is just personal preference. He should also open the wither door before proceeding to the unexplored room opposite of the wither door, or open it after it comes up from the 1x2 that he entered. Doing so allows him time to plan what he needs to do when he gets there. If he did open the door, he would have gained information on where the next wither door is, what kind of room it is, and how many exits there are when he gets into that room. Also, keep in mind that if you have the rabbit potion effect, every time you jump, you slow down by a little bit. Try not to jump unless necessary. And right here, he slowed down a little bit. I recommend standing on the leaf block and jump into this area that leads you to the bat wither essence, as it is much more consistent. Also, if you take a closer look, he subconsciously went to pick up the blessing. Remember, blessings, wither keys, and blood keys automatically pick up after a short period of time. Out of those three, you should only ever pick up wither or blood keys. Here's one quick tip when using the Spirit Scepter. The Spirit Scepter has a pretty decent AoE radius, and instead of aiming at the mobs, you should aim at the ground and let the AoE take care of the mobs. Doing so shortens the travel time between the bats touching a surface and or mob, and immediately deals damage. The scepter deals the same amount of damage regardless of range as long as the mobs are inside the scepter's AoE range. When I used to run mage, I would AoTE into a group of mobs and spam scepter on the ground. I would take quite a bit of damage, especially if I teleport into a group of skeleton masters, but this is a pretty aggressive playstyle, so it's high risk, high reward. Oh, and I really liked how he placed a super room as he's clearing the room. It is very time efficient, so great job on that. Now we are back at real time. Now if you take a look at his mana bar, he's running really low on mana, and it isn't a surprise based off of his playstyle. I used to have issues with mana management as well, and what I did to fix this issue was very simple. Instead of holding right click until the mobs you're targeting are dead, right click 2 or 3 times in quick succession. That's because most trash mobs have relatively low health, and you should be able to kill most trash mobs with 2 to 3 shots from a Spirit Scepter, assuming you are wearing Dark, Shadow, or Wither goggles. If you can't do that with those goggles, then you're probably grinding on the wrong floor. Do not expect the 2 to 3 shot trash mobs with cheaper alternatives such as the Bonzo Staff, Frozen Scythe, and etc. Those weapons are meant for entrance to floor 4 and should not be brought to the higher floors. Spirit Scepter with goggles and decently high enchanting can easily 2 to 3 shot floor 7 trash mobs as well. If you need more ability damage as an ability mage, level your enchanting, sheep pet, put living and necrotic reforges on your armor, and or reforge your talismans to Bizarre or Demonic. Bizarre gives you more intelligence at the cost of crit damage, which shouldn't matter too much if you're going for a pure ability mage reforge. Also, he should have went for bottom spider secrets first before clearing the other spider secrets because of where Blood Door was positioned. Let me find a spider room and let me explain why. One low screen later, we got spider room. So here's the path that he took after opening Blood Door. After opening Blood Door, he ran back from this pathway to get to the bat and chest secret way over there. So here is how you should do it instead. You see this? Pretend this is Blood Door. Actually, you know what? This is Blood Door. Who needs imagination when you have editing? If blood is over there and you want to do secrets, turn behind you and go down here. Start with the bottom spider secrets, as going down this path is much faster than doing what our hero did. I'd recommend taking a right turn right as you enter the bottom spider area. It is much faster than taking a left turn, and you can get back up from here. Our hero is currently doing creeper beams, and if you're wondering what mod assists you with the creeper beam puzzle, it is the Dankers mod, and the link to the Discord server where you can download the mod will be in the description box down below. Also, here's another reminder. You do not need to get the final blessings for Tic-Tac-Toe, creeper beams, and blaze puzzle. You can get the checkmark for room completion, but not the blessing, so depending on your stats and setup, you can choose to skip the blessing or spend a couple of seconds to get the blessings. Personally, I skip the blessings for Tic-Tac-Toe and Blaze, but get the blessing for Creeper Beam since it only takes a second or two. Both Blaze and Tic-Tac-Toe requires a long wait time before you can open a chest, whereas you can almost immediately open a chest for Creeper Beams. Oh, and one thing you notice that you don't have to go into the cave in this room to kill the bat if you have a ranged weapon that deals AoE damage. You can stay outside and kill the bat, which can save you a couple of seconds. Also, if you notice his fight with the angry archaeologist, he's pretty good at swapping between the scepter and Midas staff, but I would recommend using the voodoo doll before you start hitting the mini boss. However, do take note that the voodoo doll used to give invincibility ticks. This was the case 5 months ago when I used to grind floor 4s and did not own an ice spray. To explain invincibility ticks in the simplest way possible, invincibility ticks causes the mob to become immune to all forms of damage for a split second or so. It would happen every time the voodoo doll deals damage against the mob you are targeting, and I found about this when my team and I didn't do a lot of damage against the spirit bear in floor 4. We were informed that the voodoo doll will give invincibility ticks to mobs, and when we tested that theory out, sure enough, the spirit bear would die faster if none of us use our voodoo dolls. With that being said, you don't really have to worry about invincibility ticks when you are fighting alone. But if you have 3 or more people fighting the same mob, I would say do not use the voodoo doll. I would also like to mention that the invincibility tick thing with the voodoo doll was a thing 5 months ago, so I'm unsure as to whether or not the issue has been fixed or not. Another weapon with the same issue that my team found was the summoning ring. Mobs summoned from the summoning ring would also cause invincibility ticks. Alright, so the reason our hero is doing this version of Trap Room is because the stonk cheese is fixed. But Hypixel players being Hypixel players, us being the smartest when it comes to finding bugs, there's still a way to cheese it with the stonk pickaxe. Here, let me show you guys. So this is the old way to cheese Trap Room that was patched recently. You can unplug your Ethernet cable, or if you have high ping like me, just force your way in and make ghost blocks. Once all the blocks are removed, you can just spam right click and you'll eventually get the chest. Okay. After 20 attempts of trying to find this trap room, I have finally found it. It took me so many attempts. All I was getting was the other trap room. I'm kind of pissed right now. It was so hard to find it. And every time I failed, I would just slash L, and when I try to go back in, it would just give me an error. So the way they fixed this was they added a wall there to prevent the stonk cheese. So here's what you do. You break this crypt, kill the crypt, come over to this side, and if you just stand here and use the stonk like how you would do the old trap room, how you would cheese the old trap room, you will eventually be able to get the chest. So let me show you guys that there's no checkmark for the trap room, and I'll speed the clip up until I get it. If you would like to speed things up, you can unplug your Ethernet cable. I do not know how that works because I only rely on my bad ping to cheese this trap room. Well, this is taking longer than usual. It normally takes less than 10 seconds or so to cheese this trap room, but there we go. Well, as you can see, we have a checkmark here, and that's how you cheese old trap room. And let's get back to our hero who's clearing the final parts of the dungeon. There really isn't anything interesting going on here, so I'll be speeding up the clip till we hit a part where I can talk about stuff. This bridge room is one of the easiest rooms to get a checkmark on, assuming none of the bridge mobs fall from the bridge. One tip I can give you about that room regarding secrets is the bats in that room. The bat in that room doesn't escape, but you should try to kill it before you enter the water area with an AoE weapon, as it sometimes dies to Dreadlord mobs that are shooting at you while you enter the water, so just be careful of that. And you should definitely use a pair of boots with Depth Strider 3 for this part, as it definitely helps out a lot when traversing inside the water. When you're getting the chest on top here, you can also place a super boom in the middle of the 2 crypts before you open the chest. It's a quick and easy way to get 2 crypts for you and your team, and I would like to say that he did a great job clearing out these secrets while the quiz is loading. However, I would like to say that he should have entered the quiz room much sooner. He saw the room when he entered the 1x1 room next to it, and he should have went in before killing the trash mobs in the 1x1 room to get the checkmark in the 1x1 room. Now, all of the dungeon is basically cleared, and he's making his way back to the blood door. After he's done with clearing blood, he will enter the portal to the boss room to battle Livid. Since Livid takes a bit of time with his dialogues, I would like to use that time to advertise my Discord server and recently created Instagram account. But before I do, there are 2 more things I would like to say regarding our hero and this run. He placed an overflux in the boss fight against Livid, and that's good and all, but he should have placed it much sooner because the overflux lasts for 60 seconds but takes away half your mana, which in this case with our hero is 4,222 mana when he's holding the overflux, because he has 8,448 mana without holding anything. The overflux is necessary for our hero because I saw him getting really low in the boss fight, but he should have placed it much sooner. The last thing is me rating our hero from 1 to 10 in different aspects. Keep in mind, these are my personal opinion and are in no way an accurate representation of the average player, Sweat, and as for my personal rating, I am not comparing him to me, I am just stating my personal opinion on the player. Starting off with game sense. Rating him against an average player, our hero fares a 9 out of 10, a solid 9 out of 10. Compared to other Sweats, I'd say 7 out of 10, and in my books, I would personally give him a 7 out of 10. There are times when there were better options, but most of the decisions he makes are good. He knows all secrets and is fairly experienced. Easy and solid 9 out of 10, 7 out of 10, and 7 out of 10. Next up, movement. He's going to lose a lot of points here. The final verdict is 7 out of 10 compared to the average player, 5 out of 10 compared to the average Sweat, and my personal ratings, I would give him a 3 out of 10. Here are the reasons for this low score. His movements are far too fancy, and he does too many big movements that looks good, but is far too time inefficient. He also gets stuck behind blocks often, not because of lag bag, but because he walks into walls and blocks. This is the lowest rating out of all the other categories, so he definitely has a lot to work on in terms of movement. No offense to him, of course. Please don't take any offense. This is just my brutal and honest opinion. Now, for his secret paths. I would say he got a pretty high score for secret paths, and here are the ratings. 10 out of 10 compared to the average player, 9 out of 10 compared to the average Sweat, and 7 out of 10 from me, because even if he does know all secrets and has good paths for it, he still has a decent amount of moments where his secret path executions didn't go well because of his movements and because he sometimes rely on reaction instead of pre-planning his next moves. For speed, I would give him an 8 out of 10, a 7 out of 10, and a 7 out of 10. He executes a lot of things really well and makes good decisions, which results in good speeds. His final time is actually pretty decent, but there are a lot of moments where he can reduce the time spent. The final category for ratings will be an assessment on his overall skill. Overall, I would give him a 9 out of 10 compared to an average player, 8 out of 10 compared to the average Sweat, and in my books, I would give him a 6 out of 10. Overall, he is fairly skilled and experienced, however he still has a lot of room to improve and things to work on. He definitely has the potential to reach the top in terms of skill if he continues working hard. Now, for the final question, would I play with them? If I am playing casually, then definitely yes. If I play with other Sweats, his skill would let me give him a yes, but in terms of his gear, I'm sorry, but I would have to say no because if I play with other Sweats, they will want people with a Hyperion for fast run times. And his skill doesn't compensate for the lack of a Hyperion, which is why the answer is a no because of his gear. Otherwise, if he has a Hyperion, definitely yes. And if I'm on super tryhard mode, trying to get a new personal best or trying for insane times, then my answer is no. Now, this concludes the video. Everything I have to say from here on will be me advertising my Discord server and newly created Instagram account. So feel free to stay if you're interested in that, otherwise feel free to click off of the video. Anyways, if you'd like to have the chance for your run to be featured in a video like this, then join my Discord server, link will be in the description box, and head over to how to submit a clip and just read up on that. It includes all the information that you will need to be able to submit a clip properly and for me to check up on it. Just make sure to remember, I do not use all clips because I have a lot of clip submissions and I only go through them whenever I need a clip for a new video. So don't feel bad if your clip is not used, and I tend to find clips that are available in 1080p for my YouTube videos. But if your video is in 720p, there is still a chance that I would use your video if it has enough things that I want to talk about in your video. And I recently created a new Instagram account as well. Link is in the description and I post sneak peeks, updates, and more IRL stuff there. Feel free to follow me if you'd like. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.